To Russia now, where Wagner Group emblems and related insignia have been stripped from the organization's premises in St. Petersburg. The building was raided by police after the Russian mercenary group led by Yevgeny Prigozhin aborted a move to march on Moscow last weekend. And a Prigozhin-controlled media group is to shut down. Patriot Media ran the RIA FAN online news site, which took a nationalist pro-Kremlin editorial line and provided positive coverage of Prigozhin and the Wagner Group. Well, let's bring in DW Russia analyst Konstantin Eggert, who is based in Vilnius. Konstantin, the deadline, today is July the 2nd, has obviously passed. What happens to those Wagner individuals who have not signed the contract with the Russian Defense Ministry?
Monica, deadlines are a very elastic concept in Russia, so a lot of those people will be probably still thinking what they're going to do next. I do not think that many of them will sign up to join the Russian army, first and foremost of all, because the Russian army doesn't pay as much as the Wagner Group was. I do think that for now, the authorities want to show that it's over for the Wagnerites, that the group is disbanded. However, we'll see whether the whole idea of using mercenaries to fight in Ukraine will die. Frankly, I do not think so. I think they'll be trying to find new ways of employing mercenaries. As for the Wagner people, they can go to Belarus, where allegedly Alexander Lukashenko, the local dictator, set up 3 camps for them at the request of Mr. Putin. They may be, by the way, quite useful in training the Belarusian army, which is notorious for its quite weak sort of military preparedness. They can go back to Russia. That means that a lot of them will bring back their arms, and that will mean probably quite a bit of social tensions, to put it mildly, in the places where they return to. But I do think that most of them will be looking for ways of continuing to fight for money. And as I said, I think the Russian state will take notice.
You just mentioned quite a bit of social tension where they might return to. I mean, what about their image? Up until a week ago, Wagner mercenaries were hailed as heroes by many, in fact, crucial for Russia's war efforts in Ukraine. And now they're largely portrayed as villains. Is that also how they're perceived in Russia?
Well, there are different parts, different segments of the public that perceive them differently. Until the rebellion last week, actually, Wagner Group existed mostly on Russian social media, especially on the very popular messenger called Telegram, but on state television, which still kind of setting the agenda for the country, they were not very visible. I'd say that a lot of people in Russia still see them as, heroic fighters. There are others who are actually afraid of them, and this difference will, of course, remain. What I think the government will not succeed in doing is actually to making them look as villains that soon. It will take a bit of time, and frankly, I do not think it will work for the government that effectively.
And a week on, Konstantin, we had time to reflect a bit. What does this brief bolt of rebellion tell us about Vladimir Putin's hold on power?
Well, look, personally, I would repeat what I said about a week ago when the rebellion happened. He will be weakened over time, especially in the eyes of the hundreds of thousands, if not millions, of bureaucrats that are running the country on his behalf. They have seen him dithering, they have seen his rambling speech, and they have seen him basically striking a deal with the person he called a traitor. I mean, Yevgeny Prigozhin, the founder of the Wagner Group, just 7 hours after he was called a traitor, someone stabbing Russia in the back. That is something that's not easily forgotten. That doesn't mean that Putin will fall tomorrow, but he planted the seeds of doubt in this kind of vast bureaucratic apparatus that is ruling Russia. And this will have political consequences, although I wouldn't say that we need to count weeks before Putin's downfall.
All right, DW's Konstantin Eggert there. Thank you so much for that, Konstantin.
Thank you.
And for more, we can now talk to Alexei Yusupov. He's the director of the Friedrich Ebert Foundation Russia program here in Berlin. So very good to have you with us, especially because last weekend we witnessed an extraordinary event in Russia. And in an article this week, you said that Prigozhin's revolt is the biggest, quote, game changer in the Russian-Ukrainian war so far. Game changer for whom and in what way?
Right. Indeed, the revolt or the mutiny has shown that some assumptions about how stable the power regime of Vladimir Putin are very questionable. And those assumptions have been instrumental for formulating strategy on all sides, on the Russian side and the Ukrainian side, but also for us Europeans and potential allies for Russia is China. The assumption had been that the Russian Federation, although after failing the blitzkrieg option, which was the original scenario, and not subjugating Ukraine in a very short amount of time, generally would be in position to wait it out, just to maintain the existent level of escalation and to see how resilience and strength is withering away in the Ukrainian population, how Europeans are getting tired to fund and supply the war effort on the Ukrainian side. And then there is also the US election on the horizon. This assumption is now shattered because obviously Russia can't really do two things at the same time, wage a war and answer the question whether Vladimir Putin is still in the stable position of a person who controls all of Russia and also can define who his successor is going to be.
Right.
The question of succession has been preponed in a very, very dramatic manner.
So what does this mean for Putin? Because a lot of analysts immediately said, well, this has really weakened his position. And we've seen him suddenly much more out in the public as well. What consequences does it have for him and for the power structure in Russia?
Well, he needs to reassure the elites that the old system of balance of power between different elite members with Putin as their arbiter on top is still intact. This is an open question. You rightfully mentioned we see much more of him in public, and let's not forget he has been absent from most of public events since COVID started. So now he's switching back into the mode of a popular leader, which we have nearly forgotten in the recent years, because he needs to transport the message that he is still the one and only leader who can both enjoy popular support and rely on political elites. There is an election coming up next year. I know elections are not free and fair in Russia, but they have a different function. Elections in Russia are needed for the system to see whether the leader on top is still popular, because this popular support is one of the pillars of power in the Russian Federation. And now we see Putin in full campaigning mode again. And obviously this is an indication of how unstable the situation is for him.
Right. Right. What does this actually mean for Prigozhin and also the Russian Air Force commander Sergei Surovikin, who may or may not have even been part of this revolt? Both men have somewhat disappeared from the face of the earth. What do we know about them?
Well, we don't know a lot about Prigozhin himself. I think the thing to watch out for is the destiny of his corporations. You've mentioned it in your report already. We can see a deconstruction of his business empire. And you see the nature of his loyalty to Putin was that he had access to special missions and budgets from the state. He was not an independent power player. And now, with this mutiny over, he obviously will be disappearing and going into the background. Surovikin is another case, and it's more serious, I would say. At the moment, I still don't know whether it's justifiable to call it already a purge. We don't know anything except that he's not been in touch with his family for a number of days, and his deputy, right. Colonel Yudin, has stepped down. So obviously there is an inquiry into the armed forces to see whether loyalties are still intact. But this will develop. This is an important issue to watch out for.
Absolutely. And sadly, we have to leave it here. Alexei Yusupov, director of the FES Russia program. Thank you so much.